the government, the military, the intelligence agencies, and the people. And it has generally been referred to as the People's War, actually. This insurgency is People's War. Because they are the ones, let me really emphasize what the CDS mentioned a few days ago. And to also correct, the misinformation that was given. I'm happy the CDS, clarified it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't talking political. If you look at the environment he spoke was in the Northeast, the Northeast operations. And if you look at where was he talking to, in which context, he was talking in the context of operations. So all what he said in the Northeast were operational, and it remains there. It wasn't political, and it wasn't, at the strategic level. If he had spoken about collaborators in Abuja, or he has specifically mentioned something in terms of political, then you can now, read it in that context. But he spoke completely, based on the professional understanding at the operational level. So it wasn't political. Some section of the press took it as if he was inducting certain individuals within the region. All right?
So, it yes. brings me to this question. So when we said at the time that Boko Haram was technically defeated, what has happened since then?
Let me conclude, from the earlier questions, As I was saying, Colombia, Sri Lanka, it persisted for a long time. But we are not saying that it must be the same thing here in Nigeria. And we have this National Security Strategy 2019, and it's very clear. It has that provision for all of government approach in tackling the insecurity. And our focus has always been, looking at the army. That is the army that must do everything clear and disseminate and wipe out all the insurgents out of the country. But it's not like that. Just as I said, it is more or less the embedded problem that is within the society, and it requires everybody's effort. We have always mentioned that issue. Well, it will always be a wishful thinking, for one to say overnight, you will just clear this type of insurgency. These are people that have ideology, and believe that they have a mission, and once they establish it, they have a perfect society, which is not, realistic in this type of environment or this context, Nigerian context. So technical defeat, you see, if you look at it probably, clearly, 2014, 2015, early up to July, even up to some part of June, August, September, the spate of bombings, were so rampant on daily basis, from Maiduguri up to Abuja, But as of 2018, or late, end of 2016, when this thing was declared technically defeated and so on, you discover that all those things have stopped. And all those, local governments that were hitherto under the Boko Haram, insurgents, were all recovered. So you see, there are certain things, that are very clear. It has all those roadblocks across the country were all relaxed, and we never had that type of, pre-2015, attacks.